Broadcasting from Millennium Student Center at the University of Missouri, St. Louis, and online at UMSLradio.org. We are the voice of UMSL. We are UMSL Radio.
The opinions expressed on this program are the views of the host and not necessarily the views of the University of Missouri St. Louis or this station.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another installment of That Science and Nature Show. I am your host, Jeremy Howard, and joining me this week, returning guest, the man with a killer volleyball spike, Soren Johnson.
Hello, nice to be here back on the show again.
Yes, nice to have you. And we have a special guest joining us as well, Derik Holtmann. Derik, welcome to the show.
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate the invite. Thanks.
Yeah, so Soren is a grad student like me here. He's been on the show a few times. I believe you've done shopping and consumer behavior and a trivia episode, if my memory serves me well.
That's correct.
All right, and Derik is joining us for an episode all about caving, because Derik is a big caver. But Derik, I wanted to have you give a moment to introduce yourself to the UMSL listeners and the podcast listeners. Who are you here at UMSL? Because you're not a faculty, but you're something much more special, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm a staff member here at UMSL. I'm the campus photographer, if you would say that. I was a journalist for 30 years before joining the UMSL staff, and it's a lot of fun being the photographer for the campus. I get to meet a lot of great students and faculty and staff, and it's just a great environment to be working in.
Fantastic. And I personally think, I don't think this is too much of an exaggeration. I kind of think you're one of the unsung heroes of UMSL, because you document us all the time and you show us looking really good at all of our events and conferences and presentations and stuff. You make us look very good. And I think there is something to be said for that aspect of presenting us as students and faculty and staff on campus and like what we do here. So
yeah, I really appreciate that. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy interacting with all the different aspects and the different departments and the different the levels of students, the graduate students, the undergrad students, the PhD students, and it's really interesting, especially learning about all the stuff you guys are working on. It's a great education for myself, just being an observer from the outside.
Mm-hmm. So. And before we hop into the news, Soren, I just want to bring up, you hosted the Midwest Ecology and Evolution Conference 2 weekends ago. How'd that go? I was also part of that, but not in the same level of involvement that you were.
So myself, Raj, Addie, Casey, and George, all biology graduate students here at UMSL, helped to organize the Midwest Ecology and Evolution Conference. So that was a lot of fun to do, and it went very well. So.
Yeah, and I was the makeshift photographer for that event, and that was a lot of fun, just running around taking photos. But yeah, we had 100 people there, undergrads and grad students from I don't remember how many schools, but I know it was a good amount. 20? 20, yeah, it was a good amount. And Arkansas, Wisconsin, Missouri, Illinois, lots of surrounding states from Midwest. Yeah. So that was really cool. I just wanted to highlight that because I think you should be very proud of that. It was a very awesome event. All right, but we will get going with the news. So I'm going to give a little honorable mention. Every once in a while on That Science and Nature Show, there's a story that's cool, but I don't think it's quite in-depth enough to have a full-blown conversation. So I just like to highlight it. The last time I did this was a story about them finding a tomato on the International Space Station, so it's of that kind of caliber. This is a story from Science News that they discovered a new caterpillar species on the Hawaiian Islands called the bone collector, and it's literally just a caterpillar that when it kills its prey, because it's carnivorous, it wears their body parts. So it has lots of bug wings and bug abdomens on top of it, and it just kind of walks around with these sort of trophies, if you will, and that's the story they discovered. I think it's super cool. Go check out the bone collector caterpillar if you're listening to the episode right now. It's a little I don't know if disturbing is the word, but it doesn't look like a caterpillar, but it's a caterpillar because it has the body armor of its prey and victim. So thought that was a cool shout out. But we'll jump into the first story this week, which is from Futurism, and this is all about scientists who are trying to grow teeth in a lab. And I did not pull up the story. Hold on. Yeah. Here we go. Oh yeah, so Futurism. Scientists successfully grow human tooth in lab with the aims of implanting in humans. So some scientists at King's College in London have grown their first what they're claiming to be a human tooth. It is going to be an alternative to dental fillings and implants. So dental fillings and implants still exist, but the material they have made the tooth out of is made of a material that allows the actual cells that a tooth would be made of to communicate with each other to tell the other cells become teeth cells, become a tooth structure. And this is not coming to the market anytime soon. It's very far off. It's a few years, but it's what they've done so far is promising. They have made an actual tooth. Now, whether it can actually like stay alive and sustainable in a mouth, that's yet to be determined. But the tooth actually exists. And the idea is they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next. If they're going to decide to try and put like a new, like a growing tooth, if you will, in like a cavity in someone's mouth and have it grow and kind of watch it from there, or if they're going to go with like the entire tooth and just like pluck it in someone's mouth that way and then kind of see what happens. They haven't decided on avenues, but that's kind of where they are overall. Ultimately, they claim that it's going to be a better long-term solution than having implants or fillings. However, again, not at the market yet. They're in the testing phase. They have had initial success. So just wondering, what do we think of this? I mean, not to like go in people's dental history, but
I thought it was very interesting. Especially at first, I thought they were just like growing teeth and then just like plopping them in someone's mouth, basically as a replacement tooth. But from reading, like getting to the end of the article, it looks like the tooth is essentially then becoming essentially part of the mouth too, and like will grow on its own. So that would be pretty cool if that could happen, because I think there's a lot of issues with trying to do some of this current fixes for like broken teeth and cavities and stuff.
Well, and I know a lot of the problems with it is your bone structure in your jaw. When you lose that tooth, that structure around it deteriorates. Mm-hmm. And if you can actually, grow the tooth back into that bone structure, I think that would be an amazing advancement. Mm-hmm. So I have friends and relatives that have had implants and stuff, and the cost is just exorbitant to have that work done.
Yeah.
And this would be very interesting. And then just to think about what they're doing with the teeth, maybe down the road they can do with, other structures in the body that, that are deteriorating like the teeth are.
Yeah. My parents, particularly my mother, she has had a lot of like root canals and implants. I just hear all that. I'm like, ugh, I hope that doesn't happen to me. I've been pretty good about not having cavities, but I'm like, I'm hoping this is like a solution that comes to market in the next couple of years. So when I get to that point, I could have, much simpler, dental procedures if need be. Not saying don't take care of your teeth or anything. Just, just there might be options down the line. So we'll see on that. The one thing, and when Webster is always on the show, we always talk about this with these sort of things, is that personalized medicine is expensive. So I could imagine this coming to market and this being a very premium product that you get if you have the money, but probably most people will not be able to afford it. So we'll see how they sort of integrate it into being potentially affordable. Would my insurance cover this? We don't really know. Things to consider.
Yeah, well, a lot of insurance doesn't cover any kind of what would you call it? Cosmetic dental work to begin with. Yeah. So it's, just this would be just another thing, hopefully down the road. That are your children's children.
Yeah.
Maybe be able to take advantage of.
Yeah. We'll see. All right. So we'll move into our next story. And this is from Science News. And this is about chess. So I will admit I am not the most chess savvy person. So I'm going to try and walk us through this story. Actually, I'll start asking, do either of you play chess?
I used to actually in I think 6th grade. I was in the chess club, but I didn't really play much after that. That's kind of it for me.
I see. Volleyball took hold, and you're like, we're going to do this instead. Yeah, I played against my brother as a kid. I always lost, and then I played at summer camp, and I remember losing in the minimum amount of moves you can lose chess in. So that's where I am for chess.
I think that's a good goal, accomplishment.
Don't lose. But back to the story at hand. So this is from Science News, and this is chess players are relying on familiar moves even when the game changes. So in the game of chess, you have the opening move. So you have the pieces on both sides. And the idea is that you have to make a move when you first start chess. So there are 1 in 20 moves you can start any regular chess game out with. And then there is also a newer version of chess, which is invented by Bobby Fischer. He's a famous chess champion. If you don't know him, we actually have a museum, not dedicated to him, but he has a big exhibit at the Chess Museum in St. Louis. So I'd recommend checking that out. I've been there. It's a very fascinating exhibit if you don't know anything about chess or his story. But he invented chess 960, which is where the back row pieces, like the rook, the queen, the bishop, all that's all randomized, because normally it's a set pattern they're put in for a regular game of chess. So with chess 960, they're all scrambled about. And researchers at the Northwestern University wanted to compare the opening moves with regular chess to the opening moves in this newer version of chess with chess 960. And they looked at more experienced players on leechess.com between 2013 and 2021 and are examining something they call, quote, memory premium, end quote, where it's how much are these players relying on their past experiences. In other words, that opening move that they make for regular chess, they are claiming that is committed to memory. So like that's my opening move when I play chess. And there's lots of different strategies on what your opening move might be or not be. And they want to see, okay, now when we look at people who are playing chess 960, what do they do? And the next part I'm going to read directly from the actual story itself, because I think this explains it better. So, all right, here we go. Quote, in standard chess, any move has a 1 in 20 or 5% chance of being selected on average, though some opening moves are more popular than others. The colleagues counted any move that the player had opened with standard chess as stored in memory, like I mentioned before. In chess 960, a player's likelihood of starting with a given in-memory move increased by roughly 4% points on average over the 5% baseline, because if you have 20 choices, you have to pick one, that's 5. So roughly 9%. I'm going to keep going. For instance, moving the pawn in front of the queen 2 squares forward from d2 to d4 is a popular chess opener. About 3/4 of the players in the study, so roughly over 100,000 people, had opened from d2 to d4 in standard chess. Of those players, 20% opened with that same move in their first game of chess 960, regardless of what piece is behind the pawn. Among the players that had not used this move in standard chess, the likelihood of opening with that in chess 960 dropped to 10%. So in other words, having that move in memory doubled the chance the player would use an off-kilter setting. So the idea is that players are relying on what they do in regular chess, even when the board's totally scrambled. They're like, I know this move. This is the move that's going to win. I'm going to do it. And then they went on to keep studying that using another program where they're evaluating the moves overall. So like how beneficial is this move in terms of getting the player to actually win the game. They sort of scored it without the player really knowing. And they ultimately found that players will keep relying on things up to a certain point, even if it's not advantageous to do so, just because they rely on memory in that case. So there is like a tipping point where it's good to not rely on your memory move, or your first opening move, and kind of go with what's actually happening versus like, I'll just do what I always do. So they kind of wrap up this story by saying this is kind of like an analogy for life. So like the more chaotic life gets, it's probably good to reassess the situation and just not rely on whatever you usually do. So that was a little more complicated of a study, which is why I wanted to read directly from it. But do we have any thoughts on chess besides that we didn't play a lot of it?
I guess for me, when I did play chess, I always liked to set up the board in a certain way, not because I thought that it would gain me any advantage. I just thought it looked cool. So I'd always try to do the same moves to make the board look the same. I don't know if it was really advantageous to me at all, but I always would try to do the same thing. So.
Okay, so you have played chess 960 in a way.
I guess it was never 960. It was never like the flipping around the things in the back, but I would always, the moves I would always make were always the same, essentially, to try to get to almost like another starting position.
Okay. Yeah, I thought this was interesting, and I guess based on what I know about behavior, it made sense. Like people rely on their past experiences to dictate what they're going to do in the future. So that kind of made sense to me. This is just a cool sort of analogy with chess as sort of the example they're showing this play out in, because chess is very strategic. There's lots of strategies and things you can do. Again, I don't know that much about chess to keep going with this explanation, but I thought it was an interesting study that kind of gamified, if you will, like life. Any thoughts, Derik?
Yeah, I was just, when I was reading, the same stuff you were doing, and I really didn't even know this 960 existed. Because,
I didn't either. This is the first I heard of it.
I think I would enjoy that, because then you're playing against people who are seeing the board for the first time the same way you're seeing the board.
Exactly.
As opposed to somebody that, like on the, the Queen's Gambit or some weird thing that, that they know how to play these strategies that you've never even heard of. And that's what, to me, was never fun.
Yeah.
Because people would knock me out in 5 moves because I knew some strategy that I didn't know. And I think that's sort of the same thing with life and other skills that you have, even like a car mechanic assessing a situation. It's it's this because it's making this sound or it's doing this. But then if you sit back and look at the overall situation, your strategy might change. Right. And I think that's anything in life. You have that knowledge of how the board works versus a fixed focus on one specific strategy on how to complete a task. And I think that's what they're sort of getting at in this study.
Yeah, the big takeaway I just got from this is that a little bit of chaos is good, just a little bit, not like a crazy amount, just a little bit to make things interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think too, with you guys doing your research and stuff, it's got to be fun to not have that preconceived notion of how your research is going to be. You're going in and with an open mind, but the knowledge of how to do that research. So.
Yeah, that's a very glass half full way to put it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes it's not like that. But we'll move on to our last story. This is from Smithsonian Magazine, and it is summertime, so the mosquitoes are going to come out, and this last story is sort of a compilation of everything scientists have sort of learned about mosquitoes. So it's all about why do mosquitoes bite some people more than others. So they sort of give a little laundry list of things and talk about more specifics, but I'm just going to hit the highlights. So from what the scientists have found, here is the people that get bit the most. So your blood type is a really big indicator. Type O is the most popular. They don't really know why yet, just that it is. They suspect that it might have something to do with the actual blood makeup itself, but that's still to be determined. Next is the more CO2 you exhale. So some people just in general exhale more CO2 than others. Also, if you're exercising, that's going to increase the amount of CO2 because you are panting and breathing out more, which is the next one. They talk about exercise as well, which goes along with having additional sweat on your body. So sweat has compounds that are going to attract mosquitoes. They also list heat. So mosquitoes sense heat. Some people are just a little bit warmer than others. And again, if you're exercising, that's going to increase your body heat. They talk a little bit about bacterial communities. The really interesting nuance that I found in this is it's not just like the types of bacteria, it's also like the diversity. So if you have a really diverse, I guess, palette of bacteria on your skin, there's less mosquitoes coming for you, which I was like, that's really weird. I don't know if that's like sanitary, but it depends what the bacteria are. I just thought that was fascinating. They also talk about alcohol. So if you're drinking outside more, mosquitoes are going to be more attracted to that. Pregnancy is another one because of the amount of carbon dioxide release and also just increased body temperature, going back to heat and CO2. They talk about colors a little bit. So if you're wearing clothing that's black, red, or orange, that is more attractive to mosquitoes. And if you're wearing colors that are purple, blue, white, or green, that is less attractive. And then lastly, just list genetics. So some people might just have, or genetics might influence things like blood type, the amount of CO2 you exhale because of metabolism, all of that. So it's kind of the quick recap of everything the scientists know about, why mosquitoes go after some people than others. So what's our experience with mosquitoes? Do we get bit a lot in the summer? How's that going? Or not going? From past years? Because I get bit a lot.
So I skimmed through this stuff and I noticed that it was, the O was at the top, the B was sort of in the middle, and the A was at the bottom of the list. And of course I'm an A, so I have never noticed not being bit as much as everybody else around me. So that is interesting. But I do a lot of camping and outdoor stuff, and if I can figure out a way to be a bit less, it'd be really nice. And also, if they could have figured out with this and then maybe move on to the ticks, that would be really nice.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I think, for me, I had the opposite reaction because I am O blood type, so I was like, oh no. But I do feel like, compared to some other people, I guess anecdotally feel like I've been bit more. But I've never actually tested it to see if am actually bit more by mosquitoes than others.
So I actually don't know what blood type I am. I've asked my doctor this and they didn't know. They didn't have this information. So I'm like, do I just need to go get a blood test and ask them to do this for me? I actually would really like to know. It's one of those things I'm like, I feel like it's a big omission from my medical history, but
You've never done it for the anatomy and physiology lab?
No, we don't. We've never. I always teach usually the first semester, and that's like bones and muscles. So we don't do blood in AP1. Okay. So we haven't done that. But I wonder if there's a blood type kit that I can just go test in the lab.
And I will say, if you're a blood donor, sometimes your donor card will tell you.
Oh, I'm terrible with needles, so I never donated blood.
Okay.
Just a quick aside. So in organic chemistry, my freshman year of college, we could get extra credit by donating blood, and I tried, and I passed out, and they had to put me on the stretcher, and all of my classmates got to watch me recover. So I didn't get any extra credit either. So that was that. So also the nurse was kind of sassy. I asked her if it was going to hurt, and she's like, "We're pricking you with the needle and draining your blood. It's not going to feel good." And I was like, that was probably the worst thing you could have said to me. So it's like, yeah, you're not going to get blood today. I'm like, I don't think I am either.
Well, I guess going back to speaking of blood and mosquitoes, one thing I was thinking about is since I'm a diabetic, I was wondering how mosquitoes felt about if I have a high blood sugar or low blood sugar, if that would change my attractiveness to mosquitoes. So.
Yeah, I'm sure what you eat has some effect on the odor you're giving off, because they talk about alcohol, that kind of odor and CO2 levels affects it. So I'm sure food has some aspect of it.
Yeah, and it said taste too, so it makes you wonder if the sugar levels or any of that variance would affect the taste too.
Like, oh, this is a sweet tasting human.
Yeah.
Tell your friends.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps anybody out there, like, figure out why you're getting bit, or if you're going to get less bit, or maybe you decide to switch things up. So, like, wear certain colors and, don't drink when you're outside, and maybe don't exercise during the summer, like, do that indoors. Like, maybe those choices you might make. I don't know. Yeah. They make a humorous anecdote at the end about, where is it, that I thought was funny to share. Where is it? Eventually, quote, eventually future inventions might make it even possible for a type O exercising pregnant woman in a red shirt to ward off mosquitoes for good, because they're talking about like potential like repellents that they could make from mosquitoes. So I thought that was funny. But we're going to wrap up the news now. So we'll take a short break and we'll be back with topic of the show on caving. Stay tuned.
Did you know that students can often get free or discounted tickets to select performances at the Two Hill Performing Arts Center? For more information, visit twohill.org or contact the Two Hill ticket office at ticket@umsl.edu.
Hey Tritons, want to share your voice with the UMSL campus community? If you've got an interest, passion, or story that you're ready to share with the world, UMSL Radio provides the support you need to make your debut. UMSL Radio has all the training and equipment, and no experience is necessary. All we need is you. All students, faculty, staff, and alumni are invited to join us at our station. To learn more, check out UMSL Radio at Triton Connect and find us online at umsl.edu/radio.
The UMSL Pre-Med Society is a student organization to help all pre-medical students explore their future endeavors. We host events all semester for students to indulge in the knowledge of medicine. Plenty of events are available for students to attend and familiarize themselves with their future career path, such as blood drives, spokespersons, speaking with medical students or residents, and more. The UMSL Pre-Med Society would help pre-med students at UMSL to explore their dream and engage with other individuals within the same field. Search Pre-Med Society on Triton Connect for more information.
Welcome back. And now it is time for topic of the show. So as I mentioned before the break, we are going to be talking all about caving. I have Soren and Derik here to share their know-how on cave stuff, because I'm not a cave biologist or cave explorer. So they're going to give me a lot of insights and fill in a lot of gaps on the knowledge that I don't have. But I want to start off with a little sort of prologue overview of my own. So this is a science and nature show. So of course we're going to talk about the science of how caves are formed. So with caves, most people are hopefully familiar with caves. They've seen one or explored one, or not explored one, seen one or understand conceptually what it is. But the idea with the cave is that you have a couple of key ingredients for how a cave is formed. So you have rocks, you have water, and you have plant matter. So the way this works is that the rock can't just be any rock. It's got to be a certain type of rock. You have gypsum, you got limestone, you got dolomite, you got salt. And the idea is that when it rains, this rain seeps into the rocks. And at the same time, plants, die and decay. And they release carbon, as all living things are made of carbon. When they die, they release carbon. And that carbon, when it mixes with rainwater, it turns into carbonic acid. That carbonic acid starts to actually eat away and dissolve the rocks, so the gypsum, the limestone, whatever the cave rocks are made of. However, this is not like a quick process. It's not like if I just go take some carbonic acid and dump it on the ground, I'm going to get a cave really quickly. This is going to take thousands and thousands of years for a cave to form. Caves this process overall is referred to as dissolution, so it's sort of like the slow eroding of the earth to like make the actual caves. And then caves can also be formed through erosion, which is not as common, but also lava flows, which is very cool, where the lava cools and hollows out. So there are some caves around the world that are lava flow caves, which I think is very cool. In caves, you have a couple things. You've probably heard of these at some point. You have your stalactites and your stalagmites. I always get these confused, so I had to look this up. So your stalactites are your icicle-shaped deposits that are coming down from the ceiling. They're made of calcium carbonate, so they're like a spike. And then your stalagmites are like the deposits that come from the floor up. And the sort of cute phrase to remember is that stalagmites push with all their might off the ground. So that's how you remember stalagmite from stalactite. And then the point at which a stalactite coming from the ceiling and a stalagmite comes from the floor, when they meet together, that is referred to as a column. So again, all of these things are made up of like calcium carbonate. And caves have actually been a really big part of our human history. So I know we're going to focus on the more of the nature and the recreational side of caves for the show. But I thought it was good to touch on that, like, we have human history from caves. So we have evidence that some humans, not everywhere, lived in caves, and we have evidence of like human remains and fossils. Just to give some examples, we have the Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where they discovered stone tools from 1.8 million years ago. So evidence of sort of anthropology. And then we have Theropera Cave in Greece, which has fossilized footprints roughly 130,000 years old. There's lots of other examples, but it was kind of cool to highlight that, like, hey, some of us used to live in caves, and this kind of gives us insight because caves can preserve things very well in terms of tools or fossils. And then also, about caving, we have a National Cave and Karst Day. It is on June 6th. I didn't actually know this existed, but it celebrates caves and their unique ecosystems worldwide. So, prematurely, happy National Cave and Karst Day, everybody.
Thank
Covered
you.
on June 6th. All right, so that's a little prologue I want to give about caves. Now I'm going to turn over more to Soren and Derik, and I'm just going to sort of start with the more personal aspect. What got you into either exploring caves, Derik, or doing research in caves, Soren? So, Soren, you probably need to elaborate on the actual research you do, but whoever would like to start, like, what got you into doing cave stuff? Because it is a little more niche.
I can go first. So, I guess haven't always been interested in caves, so I've only actually more recently got involved in caves when I started my PhD. And so my advisor kind of here at UMSL, his kind of research focus area is looking at extremophile fish. So extremophile is like fish that live in extreme habitats, and one of those extreme habitats is caves. And so, like, one reason I got involved in doing research in caves is that they're a great ecosystem to better understand both ecology and evolution, because you have this very stark contrast between the cave and the surface environment. So you know that what those changes are, and these changes happen over a very short distance. And you have caves that are present like throughout the world, so you kind of get this replication as well. And so along with this stark change in the environment, you also see these similar changes in the organisms that live there. So often cave organisms have smaller or no eyes and less pigmentation, and we see this across many different organisms as well as across many different caves. And so and we can use that to kind of study how these organisms have evolved into the caves and kind of why they get these changes in their form.
So, quick question. Can you give an example of an extremophile environment? So you said, like, they're extreme, but, like, what is an extreme environment?
And so sometimes that's actually a debated of what exactly an extreme environment is. And so often we say an extreme environment is going to be an environment where the organism that lives there is able to live there, but other organisms can't. And even if that organism could possibly live outside of that environment, and it might even be better for them, but there's some fitness cost for them living in that extreme environment that makes it difficult, such as caves. You don't have light, and that's very important for most organisms. Or in another system that our lab studies is toxic hydrogen sulfide springs, which make it so that many organisms can't live there because of the toxicity.
Okay. And so, Derik, you're coming at this more from the naturalist exploration side. What got you into caves or caving?
Yes. So in the mid to late 80s, I was introduced to caving as a recreational caver. So Illinois Caverns is just right across the river. That was my first cave experience, wild caving experience. And it was just really opened my eyes to, like, there's just so much stuff going on. And it was a lot of fun too. And it was sort of that, outside the normal thing. It was fun to talk about. People always seemed really interested in it. And so I did recreational caving pretty much all the way up through about around when white nose hit, around 2010, white nose syndrome, which sort of hit the bats. It's a fungus that grows on the bats around their snout and stuff, and on their wings and stuff, and causes them to wake up during their hibernation. But when that hit the area, a lot of the caves and the national parks and the state parks, they closed those down to protect the bats. So that sort of limited the amount of access recreational cavers had to caves. So I joined local caving club and got into project caving, and project caving opened up a whole another realm of just opportunities to cave. And the caves that I can go to now or been in now is just unbelievable stuff. And so now I would consider myself sort of like a little bit of a citizen scientist, but more on the documentary side of stuff. That's more what I do. So biodocumentation, counting critters and caves for agencies. I do a lot of cartography with cave mapping, and then since I'm a photographer, I do a lot of cave photography too, and that's on the same side of documentation too. But that's sort of where I'm at right now. I do just a little bit of everything. We've got some conservation projects I'm working on, trash cleanups, just a little bit of everything, and yeah, that's
Cool.
sort of where I'm at.
Jack of all trades. I like it. So I have not been in that many caves, and I don't know if the listeners have. So just to throw this out, and this might seem like a very simple question, but like, what makes a cave different from other kinds of places you've explored? So like, I've researched flying squirrels, and I'm very familiar with being in a forest, and I research bumblebees now as a PhD student, and I'm in like prairies. Like, how's a cave different? Like, in terms of like exploration, research, Soren, any aspect of like, how does it sort of differ overall?
Like as like an ecosystem?
As an ecosystem, as an explorer, any of the above?
I guess coming at it from like an ecosystem perspective, caves are very unique because basically in all other ecosystems, all that energy that's in the life is essentially coming from the sun. And so that's kind of where that energy originates. And so once you get into the cave environment, you kind of no longer have that sun. So you don't get this what's called primary production, because you can't have these plants that take that energy from the sun and make it into a usable form. And so that is kind of one of these primary differences in the cave environment, is that it's it's reliant on energy often coming from outside sources into the cave for organisms to be able to live there and survive.
And then I'll just go from the explorer's point of view. The caving just complicates and adds just an extra layer to the exploration. So you're in a dark environment. Usually there's water involved, so you have to be conscious of the weather on the outside. The getting injured in a cave complicates getting rescued and pulled out. So it's just one of those things where some of the caves you're in, you're hours from the surface, and just a twisted ankle can add, multiple hours on trying to get a person out of a cave with something as simple as a twisted ankle. So that's just, just extra layers of complication to the cave, but it's also a lot of fun. I've been in caves where, we're exploring Virgin Passage. We're the first modern people, I should say, that have been in these caves. And it's really neat being, finding stuff and discovering stuff and, mapping stuff and seeing how this karst system transports water and stuff underground. It's really interesting.
Okay. Any sort of, either of you can answer this, any unique animals or plants that you discover in caves that you don't see elsewhere? I know we mentioned bats.
Yeah. So there's actually organisms in caves have been split into, there's 3 different types. And so there's organisms called troglobites, and those are organisms that basically lived all their life in cave and are only live in the cave, essentially. And then there's another classification called troglophiles, and so these are organisms that have adaptations to the cave, but they can also live outside of the cave as well. And then the third categorization is you have these what are called troglozenes, which don't have specific adaptations to the cave, but will spend some time in the cave. So there's many different organisms that can live in caves. So the one I'm particularly focused on are fish that live in caves. So there's over 200 different species of fish that can live in the cave environment. And there's actually 4 that are native to Missouri. So those are often pretty cool things to see.
Nice.
And as far as biology with me, some of the neatest stuff is when you do find a cave adapted, even just something as centipede, or something that's as simple as a centipede or something like that, that's, basically transparent, and they're adapted. The cave fish you see, a lot of times their eyes are all glazed over or non-existent. The grotto salamanders are the same way. They're sort of translucent. The bats are interesting. There's so many different species of bats that we find in the Missouri caves, and some of them have been really hit hard by white nose, but there's a bunch of them that you see that are it's just fun to see them, and the way they fly and just interact, and they're just really interesting to see this kind of stuff in the caves. So
Yeah, Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see all these like organisms in the cave, because I feel like as humans we're very visually oriented on how we get around and basically just how we interact in general. But all these organisms that are in the cave essentially don't use any like visual information, so it's all going to be like sound, taste, smell, touch. So
Okay.
And something always amazes me too is we'll be in these caves and we'll find these critters in places that you're just like, you know, how are they existing back here with the amount of energy that it takes just for life to live, and you know, and a lot of their timelines are extended. They live a lot longer, but then they're also smaller, and their systems, you know, run on just like the minimum amount of energy. And you always just going in a cave, we're affecting it just by being in the cave, and it always makes you a little leery sometimes about some of these species that you're crossing paths with, and making sure that you're not introducing something or taking something out of their environment that will just, you know, maybe eliminate a generation of that species. It's part of the conservation thing. You have, you know, you sort of exploration versus conservation versus even being in the cave, those little things. So
Right. So I thought now we'll talk about Missouri caves in a second, because that'll hit closer to home and probably where more of the listeners would realistically be able to get to. But I thought it would be cool to also mention just some caves around the world, which are kind of superlative, so they're like the biggest or the most this of something. So I have no idea if, Derik, you've heard of any of these or been to these, but please chime in if you have. Same with the Missouri caves that I get to in a moment. So in Vietnam, we have, and hopefully I pronounce all these because there's a lot of languages here. We have the Song Dung Cave, which is the world's biggest cave, and it holds the volume of 38.5 cubic meters, over 9 kilometers long, 200 meters high, 150 meters wide. It's a very big cave.
yeah, so that one, Google it. It's amazing how much volume is in it. You know, we have the longest one here in the States, but that one by volume is the biggest one, and it's amazing seeing photos of that. The entrance, especially the entrance, is just amazing.
Speaking of which, you tee me up nicely. Mammoth Cave is the U.S.'s longest cave, so 675 kilometers, which is a lot of passageways.
Yeah.
We have Yokina Cave in Georgia, which is the world's deepest cave, so it is 2,212 meters deep. So that's quite a plunge. Hopefully I pronounced this correctly. We have Eisensenwelt in Austria, which is the world's biggest ice cave. Ice caves would be cool to explore. That's kind of a different format overall. We have Cueva de los Cristales in Mexico, which is the world's biggest crystal cave. Another very cool cave I would like to go check out. We have 1860 nuclear plant in China, which is the world's biggest artificial cave. Not something you'd really think about, that someone made their own cave, but that exists in China. We have the Sistema Sac Atun in Mexico, which is the world's longest underwater cave. So we're mostly mentioning terrestrial caves, but lots of caves underwater. Kazumura Cave in Hawaii, which is the world's longest lava cave. So I mentioned lava caves at the top of the segment. Again, with lava tubes hollow out. Lots of cool types of caves to go into. It's not just a rock. You got your ice and your crystal and your lava. In Italy, we have the Blue Grotto Cave, which is the world's most famous beautiful sea cave. That might be subjective for beautiful, depending on how you define beauty. And then lastly, we have the Waitomo Glowworm Caves in New Zealand, which is the world's bioluminescence cave. So artificially led by organisms. So that's some worldwide caves. But in Missouri, I'm sure you know many more of these, Derik. I only know the first one is Merrimack Caverns. So that's kind of the famous one, which is off of the historic Route 66 near Stanton. It has all the history with Jesse James and his gang with their hideout and everything. I visited this like two summers ago with some friends. I would highly recommend. They have tours and everything. It's a really spacious cave. It's a very easy hike. They also have like a really cool like amphitheater that they sort of like made out of like the cave wall and use like a projector and stuff. So that was kind of cool, like sit in. But that's the only one I really know about.
Yeah, so that's your typical show cave.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
for normies like me.
Yeah, no, it's the extreme of all show caves. That's the show cave. It's pretty neat. So, and there's a reason it's a show cave. It's worth seeing. So
yeah.
So I guess, Derik, what's the difference between like a show cave and a wild cave?
Yeah, I would say the show caves. There's a reason, because they're so, so ornate. And also a lot of them are accessible. So the way the cave or the entrance to the cave was made, it made it easy for them to create passageways for tourists to go into. I've been in a bunch of other caves that there's sections of the cave that are unbelievably beautiful, and it would be an ideal show cave, but to get to it, it'd just be monetarily, it would just be impossible. It would just be so expensive to do it. But some places try. So.
All right, so just to get through a few more, and again, Derik, feel free to chime in. We have Stark Caverns and Mark Twain Cave. I'm not familiar with any of these, so if you know anything about them.
Yeah, so Mark Twain's cool because that's going to be more of a maze cave up near Hannibal, Missouri.
Okay.
And that's, just right there by all the Mark Twain tour stuff, and it's a great cave. People should go and check it out. And then right next to Mark Twain Cave, there's another one too, and I just drew a blank on the name of it. But those caves are really great, and they're close, for people in the St. Louis region to visit.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. And then there's some seasonal caves they list, which I'm guessing only don't go in during the winter for safety purposes. But we have Onondaga Cave and Cathedral Cave. I don't know where those are.
Yeah, so Onondaga is just down 44. Same with Cathedral. Then there's also Fisher Cave right down there too. Onondaga is just amazingly beautiful, and they just did some new lighting in the cave recently. It's one of the gems in Missouri, and I really recommend it. And once again, that one's just south on 44, probably maybe an hour and 20 minutes from here, something like that. And then in Merrimack State Park, which is the next exit past Merrimack Caverns, Fisher Cave's in there, and that's a great one. And Cathedral. I just drew a blank on where Cathedral's. It's right in that area too, I'm pretty sure. So,
yes.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, you're good. These are things we have to check out. And then I just want to list two more. We have Ozark Caverns, which is that in the Ozarks?
Yeah, I think that one's down south a little ways.
Okay.
I don't think I've been in Ozark Caverns. And
okay.
And then Marvel Cave, is that one you're
Yeah, that's the last one.
And Marvel, is that the one in Silver Dollar City?
It is, yes.
Okay, so that one's...
It's part of a theme park, according to this article.
Yeah, that in the Marvel Cave, that one's... it's a great little cave, too. And in the main big room there, there's the famous photo of a hot air balloon inside the main room is just really neat. And that one's if you're at Silver Dollar City, you just got to do the Marvel Cave tour. So.
Okay, very cool. Well, listeners have some caves to check out over the summer. Soren and I have ideas for summer outings. Go caving. Well, maybe to go touristy caving. I don't know if I'm going to be hardcore enough to go caving. But I thought maybe I'd ask each of you, because you've been in a lot of different caves, what's the most interesting cave you've been in and why? Or what was interesting about it? This does not have to be like a public touristy cave. It could just be a cave.
So I guess the most interesting cave for me is the one that I'm primarily doing a lot of my research in, which is in southern Mexico in the state of Tabasco. We call it Cueva del Azufre, so it's like sulfide cave. And so this cave is pretty unique because there's these hydrogen sulfide springs in the cave that make the water toxic to most organisms, but this one species of fish is able to survive in that cave and survive not just in like small amounts, but actually like in huge, large abundances where there can be more than like 100 of these small fish per square meter. And so what's really cool about this cave is that most caves are nutrient depletion because they lack because there's no plants there, so you don't have this like energy in the system. But because of this hydrogen sulfide, there's this bacteria in the cave that can take the hydrogen sulfide and make energy from that. So there's actually energy being produced in the cave, which is pretty unique. And so that allows this high abundance of fish as well as some other organisms to be in there. And this hydrogen sulfide also, as it kind of like oxidizes in the water, it produces this very light sky blue coloration. And so it creates this very picturesque like scenes, especially there's some skylights in the cave. So you have this light shining down on this very like sky blue water. So.
Okay, very cool. How about you, Derik?
So every cave has its personality and different aspects that I really enjoy. So even the smallest 20-foot cave and then the largest like Mammoth. But I'm going to have to go with Mammoth just because it is just overwhelming how many miles of cave passage there are. And I'm currently helping out with some of the mapping projects there with Cave Research Foundation. And it's just... Some of the passages we're working in, we're traveling 4 to 6 hours quickly traveling through the cave 4 to 6 hours to get to some of the areas where we're surveying in, and we're spending 16 to 18 hours underground while we're doing these mapping projects. And the passages, you'll go through so many different styles of passages: dry passages, very ornate passages, very boring passages, very wet passages. It's just, and then there's vertical relief and climbing and just all kinds of different things in this cave, and it just has so much to offer, and it's just so unique, and just how big it is. It's just overwhelming to even think about it. When you look at a map, it just looks like somebody just made squiggly lines everywhere.
Wow. Okay. All right, so let's transition a little bit to getting into caving, and kind of this falls more on the recreational side, but again, Soren, feel free to chime in. So I'm a newbie. I'm trying to get into caving. I don't know how to get started. How do I get involved? If I'm what kind of gear do I need? What considerations of challenge do I have to consider in terms of like I mentioned there's physicality component to this quite a bit. Safety, how does that all play in? Just kind of give me the lowdown. I know nothing about caving. How would I get into it? What would I need to know as an aspiring caver?
So first of all, you need to find a caving grotto. So I'm just going to do the broad thing. Go to caves.org, which is National Speleological Society's website. And on caves.org, there's going to be a site that says Go Caving, a little tab. And when you go on that Go Caving, you're going to find a grotto. And then you click on the state you're in, and then you find your local grotto. So in the St. Louis region, Merrimack Valley Grotto is my grotto, and Soren belongs to Merrimack Valley Grotto. So that's one of the larger ones in the St. Louis area. But there's also...
So just real quick for the listeners, a grotto is a group of people who are cavers?
Yep. So grotto is a caving club.
Okay.
Yep. And that's what we call the caving clubs. We call them grottos. So I would find a caving grotto, a caving club, and that's going to be the best way to join. They're going to know the caves that are in your region, what you need to wear, what you need to take. That kind of things. And then if you're on the UMSL campus, the Environmental Adventure Organization has done several trips in the past couple of years, and that would be a good place for UMSL students to get involved, just as a good outdoors group that's environmentally conscious. And there'll be some opportunities next year to go in caves with that group too. So then just safety-wise, you want to have 4 people. You want to always tell somebody that, hey, we're going to this cave. We're expected to be out at 3 p.m. And that way, if they don't hear from you by 4 p.m., they know that something's wrong. And, that's little stuff like that. Helmet, 3 sources of light, and they all work, and the helmet works. Clothing-wise, every cave's different. So, a cave that Soren's going into is going to be different gear than you would be going into in some Missouri caves. Mm-hmm. So that clothing's a little specific to the region that you're going into, but I will say that most caves are about the average temperature of the surface. So around here, most caves are around the 55 to 58 degree mark, maybe a little chillier in certain areas of the state. And then you have to deal with moisture. There's a lot of moisture in most of the caves in Missouri. So little stuff like that. Okay. And I once again, I always say the cave conservation, the thing, take nothing but pictures, leave nothing but footprints, and kill nothing but time. Mm-hmm. Sort of a little mantra like that. But hopefully that sort of answers the question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess just to piggyback off that, just recently joined the Merrimack Valley Grotto, and so it's been really nice because didn't really know anything about Missouri caves and stuff, so that's been a great way to kind of get involved and learn more about the local caves. So.
Okay.
And I will say too, most of the caving grottos and caving clubs, they're going to be a resource for recreational caving, project caving, mm-hmm. Doing biology, doing mapping. They're the people with the knowledge base that's really going to introduce you to the wider spectrum of caving. So
okay.
And there's a lot of opportunities.
Very cool. So the last thing we'll have as we last question I'll throw out as we wrap up this section is sort of protecting caves. So Derik, you kind of mentioned minimizing the human intrusiveness, if you will. But are there certain other things we can do sort of sustainably to protect caves? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't think about caves in their daily life as like ecosystems that are out there. We had this conversation kind of on the last episode when we talked about urban ecology, how people don't think about cities as ecosystems, but they are. So in addition to just like the human, when you're going into caves, are there other sustainable things we should be considering just in the environment as caves, besides just entering caves or not entering caves?
I guess one thing that can happen, I know at least in like kind of around the world, is sometimes caves are just seen as kind of like trash pits, as where people just like, oh, it's just like a hole in the ground and they'll just like throw trash. So just that's a big thing, like don't do that.
Okay. Have you encountered like trash in the caves you've been in?
Yeah.
Okay. Just what kind of stuff? I'm just curious.
So I guess in Mexico, there's one cave that we just like drive by in this one area, and that's just where everyone goes to dump their trash. So it just is piled with garbage. And then one that's not like purposefully done, but one of the caves that we go into it's near a farm. And so sometimes we'll find essentially bottles of like fertilizer that get washed down in there into that system. So,
and I'm just going to piggyback on what Soren said. The stuff that happens on the surface in a lot of these karst environments, so like in Monroe County, Illinois, and Perry County, Missouri, and even here in the city of St. Louis, dumping oil down the drain, that has to go somewhere. And people don't think about it, but a lot of the storm sewers here in the city of St. Louis dumps into a karst aquifer, and there's a bunch of caves here in the city that I've been in that you just don't realize it's under the city streets, and we find a lot of interesting things. And like in Perry County, there's not a lot of surface streams. Everything goes into sinkholes, and that water is basically going through the systems. And when you dump something on the ground, it eventually will go in there, and potential of harming an ecosystem is there. And there's been some work, especially in Perry County, Missouri, to improve the karst aquifer down there, and they've done just amazing work over the last 10 or 15 years, getting the cave ecosystem improved. Some of the stuff I heard from early explorers down there, that some of the stuff down there wasn't even initerable. There was no cave life, and stuff was just dying off. And now you go down there and it's full of life. And every now and then there'll be some kind of event that'll happen on the surface. There was a friend of mine who had a cave flood recently, and somebody's they have the sewer in their backyard. I just drew a blank on what it was called, but some of that leached into the water, groundwater, and then flooded into his cave and really did some damage to some of the water in there. And luckily it was a rainy time of season, so within a week it was already washed back out. But it's an interesting how what you do on the surface affects what goes on underground. So.
Okay, things to consider.
Yeah, and I know in some other places of the country, being like conserving water is also very important, because it takes it from the underground aquifers, and some of those spots can be habitat to a lot of some like cave organisms as well. So sometimes that like draining those aquifers will kind of take away that habitat. So.
Okay, good to know. Any last thoughts as we wrap up our conversation about caving? Anything you want to listen or leave the listeners with? Excuse me, nuggets of wisdom, last minute things to say.
I will say that Cliff Cave, the St. Louis County, has a program that they supply the helmets and the lights. Just go on their site, and you can do tours of Cliff Cave. That's a great opportunity. If you've got 4 people, helmets, lights, and some gear, Illinois Caverns right now is open. That's a great beginner's cave this is for wild caving trips. And I do still encourage everybody to join a local caving club or like a university outdoor club. So.
Yeah. Okay. I guess kind of going off that too, I think everyone should, just experience going into a cave at least one time, just because of how unique and different the cave environment is kind of from the surface, just to kind of experience that ecosystem.
All right. Very cool. Well, that is going to wrap up top of the show. We will take another short break, and then we will be back with Outside of Science. Stay tuned.
Hey, if there's any guys out there that's just looking for a brotherhood, or just, Instagram and Greek life, come talk to Kappa Sig. You can always find the brotherhood on Instagram at Kappa Sigma UMSL. We hold weekly events, have fun, and weekly meetings. Come join the Kappa Sigma Brotherhood. You can always find us on Instagram again at Kappa Sigma UMSL. Hey, if anyone's out there, looking for a loving community and interested in Middle Eastern culture, come talk to MISA. That's the Middle Eastern Student Association. You can find the community on Instagram at UMSLMISA_. We hold weekly meetings, events. Come out and be a part of the community. You don't have to be a Middle Eastern person to be part of the community. We accept everyone. It's all about unity and bringing people together. You can again find us on Instagram at UMSLMISA_.
Hi, I'm Dan Girth, Director of Student Services in UMSL's Honors College.
And I'm Lana Jabbar, biology major, class of 2026, and a student in the Honors College. And we're here to let you know that even if you're already a student at UMSL, it's not too late to become part of the Honors College.
That's right. If you have 4 or more semesters left and a 3.2 GPA, you can still earn the Honors Certificate.
As a student, my favorite part of the Honors College is the community and all the events they host every semester.
For me, teaching honors classes is always the best part of my day. I love being in small discussion classes, helping students learn from each other's perspectives. If you like small discussion classes and writing more than standardized testing, please apply to Honors.
To start the application process, you can visit the Honors College online or just call Dan at 314-516-7197. We hope to see you next year.
And we're back. And now it is time for Outside of Science, that part of the show where we talk about things, you guessed it, outside of science to prove that we are in fact not robots that work and do research 24/7. So, we're ending the end of another long, laborious semester, and I realize this is the part of the semester or year where people don't do as many things because they got a lot of things to do for school. I have one thing to share, and it's not the thing I think you're going to share, Soren, so I'm going to go first because I don't want to step on your toes. Okay. So the only real one thing I've been doing when I've not been doing teaching or other stuff is the season 2 of The Last of Us is currently airing on HBO, and I have been watching it oh so slowly. I'm a few episodes behind, but it's been very good. If you're a fan of the games like I am, you'll enjoy it a lot. If you've never seen the show before, I think you'll also really enjoy it. It is great production, great characters. The cinematography is fantastic. The action scenes with the infected zombies and the mushroom people, it's all great. So would highly, highly, highly recommend. If you only want to watch the show or if you played the games before, definitely watch it. It's fun to see all the differences on how they deviate from the games, because making a video game is not the same as making a TV show, but they have the same overarching story. So that's the one thing I wanted to share.
Yeah, and I think the thing that Jeremy was hinting at that he wants me to share is that unfortunately we did not, our intramural volleyball team did not win the championship.
Yeah, it was volleyball season, which I may have mentioned on past episodes. I don't remember. It all blurs together on my end. But yeah, we had our chance and we didn't make it.
We didn't make it. So that's sad, but
it's kind of a recurring theme though. We've almost made it many semesters.
But it's always fun to do. Mm-hmm. Always fun to kind of be active and do something kind of outside of research. So
feel free to share other things. That was just the one thing I knew you probably wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been the main
thing. All right.
Outside of science for more recently. So,
how about you, Derik?
Well, I'm really excited. Commencement's coming up, and it'll be a busy weekend. And even busy week this week with the orchestra concert coming up on Thursday night, I believe, and that's going to be fun. And it's great to see all these seniors and all these performances, end of the year productions and stuff on campus, and looking forward to a little bit of a break during the summer, but starting back up in the fall.
I'm sure it's chaotic at this time. Like, do you just get emails like, Derik, we need you here at this time, and here at this time, and here at this time? And you're just like, okay.
It can be bad, but it's not as bad as it sounds.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun, especially going to some of these events. It's they're a lot of fun to go to. So. Okay, cool. All right, anything we want to share as we wrap up Outside of Science that you didn't get to share?
I guess we have about a month left till National Cave and Karst Day. Is that right?
That's
June
correct.
6th, so
June 6th.
Got a month to plan something. So
yeah.
I will be in Perryville, Missouri on June 7th for a Karst event, presentating. I'll have photos and a bunch of other stuff. We'll have a squeeze box to see how tight of a passage you can fit through.
Oh, that's fun.
That kind of stuff. It'll be a lot of fun. So I'll be down there and doing a lot of caving this summer. So if anybody wants to go on a caving trip, track me down and I'll see if I can help you out.
All right. Very cool. And I want to make a quick announcement about summer. So this is the last semester episode of That Science and Nature Show, where we record in the UMSL radio studio. I have plans for summer episodes. Right now, maybe 2, maybe 3. We'll see. My summer schedule is going to be a little more full than usual in past summers. But yeah, I have plans for summer shows. They will not be live like this usually is. So I will post about that on my Instagram page, which is @ScienceAndMediaEnthusiast. So if you want to follow me there for when you know that summer episodes drop, feel free to do so. Otherwise, yeah, I'm going to do the outro. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of That Science and Nature Show. I want to thank Soren and Derik for joining me to talk all about caves. This is a fantastic episode. Derik, you're always welcome to come back on the show anytime.
Yeah,
and
thanks,
Soren's
I really
already
appreciate
been.
it. Thanks, yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, thanks for allowing me to come back on the show. So.
Yes, yes. It's been a few months since trivia, so that's come and gone. Remember, you can find past episodes of the show wherever you get your podcasts. Until the summer when you hear my voice again, you've been listening to That Science and Nature Show. My name is Jeremy Howard, and we are out.